Steph, I'm stoked to have you on the podcast today. We've been working together for a while, and it started off from a LinkedIn message that I think you probably don't respond much to, and I probably wouldn't respond much to. But yeah, all started on LinkedIn, and here we are. So yeah, tell the audience a bit, so I don't butcher it, but tell the audience a bit about Hello Nanny, what you're up to, and the bigger vision of what you got going.
Yeah, so Hello Nanny is a boutique nanny agency. We were established in Texas and we serve both Texas and California today. And we are expanding on a nationwide capability. The goal is to support parents as they hire nannies or in home caregivers for their childcare needs.
Beautiful. And I'm curious as well because I know your background and story a bit about it. Like, why nannies? Like, I mean, you can start any business in the world. I think the coolest thing is whenever we got connected, I was like, I've never heard of this. That what we do applies to it. It can help, but like, I'm really curious why this industry, why this offer, what excites you about it?
Yeah, so I was a young mom. I had my daughter when I was 20, and she's now 18. However, I kind of started over. I tell everyone I fell and hit my head, and I had my kids 13 years apart. So with my daughter, I really had no support. I raised her on my own. She was in daycares, and I will apologize for eternity. She was my guinea pig. So my son, on the other hand, I had a lot of support. I was at a different season in my life where I could do that. So I leveraged the support where it was available. And essentially, what I found was the vast difference. So in my first marriage, I was a single married mother. And in my second marriage, I went into it knowing exactly what I would tolerate, what I wouldn't, what I wanted that dynamic to look like, what I wanted the domestic load to look like, and how we would share parenting responsibilities. So I went into it with a lot more knowledge. And so when my son was first born, my husband and I were kind of like hitting heads and arguing over who's going to do what and how much are you contributing or not. And so then when my son was 3 weeks old, we ended up hiring a mother's helper, which I was against initially. I was being very prideful. I didn't want to hire help. I could do it on my own. And after setting aside my pride, I agreed to get a mother's helper. And then that mother's helper quickly evolved into a full time nanny who then became an extension to our family and that I attribute my marriage to. Like I tell everyone, if it wasn't for my nanny, I'd probably end up divorced again. Happily married, I think 8 years, I've lost count this June. But if and so I thought to myself after having this relationship with my nanny, every mom deserves this type of support, or every parent, not even just moms, right? Moms and dads deserve it. And so what I found is that when you have children, your marriage really suffers because you're both in the trenches and there's no time for your relationship. But when you have a nanny, you have that luxury. So, daycare closes at a very specific time definitively, whereas your nanny you can work with and they'll work around your schedule. And, maybe they'll do an evening once a week or they'll do a weekend once a weekend. So then you and your husband get to date, get to have a relationship. It's pretty amazing.
I love it. I mean, I always love working with businesses as well that the owner, the operator has the story, right? Like they've been there, done that. They get the need, they get the pain. For those who haven't been in that scenario, you listed a few of them, but like, how have you seen your all service, the placement of it, like actually help some of the customers? Like, what are some of the unique things that you've heard?
I mean, I've had parents who come to us and they're just at a wit's end because they have tried to hire their own nanny and
I'm
they've,
sure you have horror stories on that one.
oh yes, they have a revolving door of candidates that didn't show up. They are parents that have to go to work and they're like, my nanny just didn't show up and I had to call out. And then it's a reflection on me and my career because, my nanny doesn't show up. And so after several failed attempts, they finally just go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to delegate this to the professionals, and that's the agency because we have backup providers as well. So when a nanny calls out, we've never had one of our nannies no show. They would, if that happened, the nanny would just never be represented by our agency again in the future. So there's checks and balances in place. There's accountability. Whereas on other platforms that are self service, there's no accountability. there's no, so I mean, limited accountability. Like people can give reviews and things like that, but essentially, a candidate would just be banned from our agency if that ever happened. So it's got, yeah.
It's interesting. I actually want to dig in. Like, what are the traits of a good nanny? Like, because I think the way I think of that is I'm not hiring a nanny, but I hire employees. And I feel like there's probably a lot of overlapping traits that come with like what you're seeing, what constitutes a good nanny, bad nanny. What are some of the, like the similarities? I don't know. I'd just be curious because you probably go through, you'd know better than I, but quite a few candidates, probably every day.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the the two greatest qualities are timeliness and communication abilities.
Yep.
Communication and timeliness. If you can, because you're essentially co-parenting with parents, so you
Yeah.
and you also have to be um not open-minded, but I don't know what the word I'm looking is for, but it's like open to feedback, right?
Yeah.
You have to be willing to take the family's lead and understand their way of doing things.
Yeah. Almost be malleable to the way exactly the way they do things.
Correct. I mean, and now don't get me wrong, there's some parents who are new and they're like, I don't have any clue what I'm doing.
Yeah. You tell me what the best setup is.
Yep. I want someone that knows what they're doing and comes in and shows me the ropes and then kind of like go from there. So it just depends on the style, and all of
Yeah.
those things factor in. If you have a parent that's an alpha and you put an alpha nanny in there, it's not going to go well, right? But if you have a parent that's an alpha, then you want to find a nanny that can work well with an alpha and vice versa. So,
I like that. Yeah, you think of all the intricacies because whenever I think we first connected, I was like, oh, cool, placing nannies, and I was like, it makes sense. And then the more and more I've worked with you, I'm like, wow, there's a whether it's you all or not you all, like maybe it's just a you all thing or others, but really getting detailed about all thought processes around right. You're placing the nanny, but you're putting it into an environment of another family. That family has their own ways of doing things, like pulling that out of people as well. Because I had a nanny, I wouldn't know what to say because like defining how you work as a family is also a whole thing as well. I guess I'd be curious in saying all of that. You market the nannies, you have to find the right ones, you place them in families. How do you think about going out to families, marketing to them, talking to them? Like we've talked a little bit about the pain points they're probably facing, but how has that evolved, changed, or honestly, like, what do you find interesting? Because I've talked about you all before, and people are like, "That's a thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a real thing." So I just be curious, like, what have you found out in growing the company and really targeting some of those families that are your customers?
yeah, so I, take a more holistic approach where I want to add value to the lives of parents. So rather than just saying, "Oh, hey, do you need a nanny? Do you need a nanny? Do you need a nanny? Hey, I'm a nanny agency. Do you need a nanny?" I really seek to understand, like, what does a parent need to successfully get through parenthood, right? Because parenthood, it's the hardest hood you'll ever grow up in. Like, you know that it's a saying. So I would say, just figuring out a way to get them through parenting. And so, whether that's an IBCLC or a pelvic floor specialist or a lactation, or IBCLC is lactation consultant, but also sleep consultants.
Oh, so that's interesting. I actually kind of forgot we talked about that. You're almost you're I jokingly call them human routers, but you're someone that like we do X, but I can totally hook you up for A, B, C, D, and E as well.
Yes, I'm a connector. I am a connector at
Yeah,
my
you are.
core. And that's actually when I moved here to Texas. So I relocated to Texas 4 years ago during COVID to get my daughter on a campus here. She was just starting her freshman year. So anyway, rewind over 10 years ago, I did software sales in the real estate space. And I used to come to Texas for a real estate conference. So naturally, I'm connected with all of these real estate agents. Ironically, I mean, throughout the country, but in Dallas specifically. And so when I moved here, a friend of ours from California, who's also an agent, relocated here. And he needed a broker to hang his license with. And I was like, oh, I know the guy for you. And I connected them and made it all come together, all because of a connection that I had 10 years ago. So, and my husband made a comment and he was like, oh, yeah, anything you need, just go to Stephanie. She knows someone that, she can connect you with whatever you need. So at my core, I'm a connector. I believe in like a rising tide lifts all boats. How can we find brand synergies where we speak to the same audience, but we don't compete and work together?
Dig into that a bit more as well, because you're also my example for some of our other clients as well, about you find such unique ways to get in front of your audience, but it's all through your affiliates, your partnerships. It seems like it's at your core. You're just a connector. But how do you think of that from a business lens, that this is going to help me generate revenue, but it's a win-win, right? Somebody else is going to get potentially a lead or a client as well.
Well, I have an advantage, kind of an unfair advantage, because I've been in sales my entire life. So I started in sales when I was 10 years old. I was doing door-to-door newspaper sales when newspapers were still
I
a
was gonna
thing.
say, if you're dropping a line like, I started at sales at 10 years old, you got to give me some story about what that is or what you're doing. But yeah,
I
I didn't start in sales at 10.
It was door-to-door newspaper sales. It was mistletoe at Christmas. It was taking candy bars from Costco to or from Sam's to school to flip the candy bars. It was
That's the way to do it.
yeah, and it was for Pop Warner cheer. Like I did competitive cheer growing up. My parents, I'm one of 8 kids, so my families took the approach of you want something, go get it, earn it, figure it out. And so I had to fundraise for all my competitions and sports and things like that. So it correlated into my role today, where I have this ability to, one, understand the market, like know your audience, research your audience like the back of your hand, know who all your competitors are, know who's who in this space, and be willing to research. I mean, when I say I work 18-hour days of digging and digging and digging and researching and figuring out who's who and just knowing my industry inside and out. And then knowing, being able to identify who the decision makers are and just apply that business development and sales sense that I have acquired over my career and applying that to the build out of my business and my go to market strategy.
Stephanie, I think about, we were talking before we hit record about, I'm a parent. I've got 2 daughters. When my first was born, we were in the situation of trying to figure out help for the first time. I had no idea that nanny placement was a thing, or it existed, or there were services around it. I probably should have gone to Google and searched and tried to learn more. I'm thinking about what you do in the industry you're in as something that's probably maybe newer to a lot of parents, or it's just not a traditional thing that new parents might know about. I'm curious, just how do you think about making sure that first time parents who are juggling their careers um, understand that Hello Nanny exists, and the types of things that you think about doing to make sure that your brand and services are in front of them?
Yeah, so um, the nanny agencies is nothing new. It's been around for many years. However, it's predominantly served high net worth individuals. So, however, with the shift in demand in childcare, and that is growing exponentially year over year, that the nanny has become more of a household name, especially with these big platforms that are self-service, where kind of like the gig economy, people can go on and sign up to be a caregiver on a platform, and parents can also sign up and they can just connect and try to find their own person. The problem is anyone can sign up, and parents are looking for a needle in a haystack. So they're trying to figure out on their own the recruitment, the vetting, crafting the job requisition, interviewing, all the things that go into finding a candidate. And so that's where we lead with, trying to educate families on how to do that and being able to offer more services. So historically, the placement agencies only offer full-time or part-time or live-in placements. And the percentage that a family would pay an agency is anywhere between 15 to 25% of the nanny's annual salary. So what I found is, one, there's a ton of ambiguity going into a search. You don't know what you're going to pay. And by the time you get to the finish line and you love the candidate, that candidate could be anywhere between $15,000 to $30,000 to hire, just the agency fee. That's not counting their wages for the year. And for the average family, that's incomprehensible. So, of course, they go to the self serve sites and they're like, I'll do this myself. So, that's why I created this model that is fixed. So, the agency has no vested interest in what a family pays a nanny because we make the same fee regardless. So, if a family wants a greener candidate that, it's going to it's going to be more in their budget, more cost effective, then we're going to go ahead and present those candidates to them because we don't have a vested interest. But at the same time, we are also going to educate the family along the way to say, hey, this is what industry standard benefits are. A lot of parents end up losing their nanny because they are not observing those industry standard benefits, and that can be anything from banking hours to not paying on payroll or not giving guaranteed hours. There's just so many things and intricacies in the industry that mainstream that parents don't really know about. And so that's where Hello Nanny really bridges that gap. And that's how we communicate to our clients. Um, and we even went a little further than that because what I found was a lot of families are excluded from our services because the buy in is really high. So, what I did, and I know that a lot of parents do want to take on their own search. And so we encourage that. We want to empower parents. That's our goal. Is so I found that, we've kind of migrated a little bit and expanded our services as time has gone on because I found that there was a need in the marketplace that isn't really being served. And that's to offer consulting services. So a family wants to do their own search. Great. Go ahead and do your own search. Use our services as little or as much. We have other smaller packages that you can meet with our recruiter. You can we can help you to uncover your family's needs, fully craft a job requisition that's unique to your family. We will coach them on what the rates are in that market because what the rates are online are not accurate. They're very far skewed, and so we will give them that feedback about the market rates and make us a recommendation for them. And then also let them know about all the industry standards and give them all the tools. So the interview resources, the working trial tips, the work agreement template, all of the things that they'll need to successfully hire that nanny. So to expand our offerings. And that's, as a business, I think one thing that we've done well is figuring out like how can we open up additional revenue streams.
A lot of what you a lot of what you dig in there that makes me think, ironically, it aligns with what we're doing, but this seems to be something that people always, especially parents, are doing their research on because they probably, I'll put it this way, there's a lot of first time families who are looking at nannies. So it's a lot of searching and figuring out if it's right for me. Transparently, when we got connected, I was like, I thought this was just for like the Bill Gates of the world and people like that, right? Like your model changed my perception on that, but I'd be curious as well. What, when people search for this, what are their concerns? What are they looking at? Like, what are some of the objections that you hear? I'm more so curious because I think the caveat of everything that you just said is that uh, it's such an interesting addition, and for you, like it's a lot of myths around what this really is, and like the actual pay scale and what the benefits should be, and like there's so much to learn about this topic. Obviously, we're doing SEO, so there's a layer of that. But I'd just be curious, like you're on calls with these people. Uh, what are they thinking? What are some of those common objections? Like how have you handled those?
Mm, let's see. I mean, a lot of the objections we have is essentially the price, that we charge our clients and like how they could go do this themselves for free. And it's like, well, sure, I could
Go
change
for it.
my oil for free too, right? But I'm not changing my oil because I would rather give that to a mechanic that knows what they're doing. But to each their own, like respectably, right? If you want to go do this yourself, by all means, like I have a blog with everything you need to know about the industry. Take it and run with it. It's a matter of doing what you're good at and delegating the things that you're not the expert on. But some of us like to change our own oil, and that's okay too.
I love that analogy. Yeah, because I'm definitely not that person.
Yeah.
I'll shift the tone a bit. I want to dive in now that we've set the stage for Hello Nanny, right? Again, I think it's the hidden tone of some of the things I've hit on as well. Is that it's unique what you do. It's not the what I think a business that everybody thinks of or knows about. Um, right? I could say roofing company, you know what I mean? Nanny place, and you're like, oh, tell me more. How have you thought about marketing? What are some of the marketing things you've put into this? Um, yeah, I mean, in reality, when people search for you, how are you making sure that they're found? SEO is one of those, sure, but like, I'd be curious what else you've tried even before us or while working with us.
I mean, I knew from the very beginning that SEO was important because I sold SEO to law firms in one of my careers, or it through my career. One of
Yeah,
the roles that I held was selling SEO to law firms. So when I started my business, it's really funny that like I had all of this experience throughout my career that prepared me for this season of being a business owner, where I didn't even realize I was being prepared for this. And my husband is a business owner. He's been a business owner for 25 years. So he essentially mentored me subconsciously. And I, I mean, SEO was just an automatic, like, you didn't even have to convince me that it was necessary.
tell me more about that because I didn't ask you that question, but what went through your head to say that it's automatically necessary? And again, we're the vendor, but don't try and impress me or be biased. Like, I'm really curious what how you thought about that and why it was such a lock for you.
Because I know about Google, web crawlers, search engines. I know about all of that, right? Like
Yeah,
I know the inner workings. Like I know enough to sell SEO. So I
yeah.
need to be sold SEO because I knew how valuable it was. And so I was probably the easiest deal you ever closed. Uh, but I mean, I started with SEO. It was just a matter of initially when I first started, the web developer that I hired also did SEO.
Yeah.
And I just knew they weren't doing a good job. So I was kind of on the hunt again, going back to, figuring out who's who and how can I find someone that's doing a good job and run with that. So that's where you came into the equation. And I don't know if you reached out to me or I reached out to you.
Something like that.
How that
One
happened.
of the two.
But again, I feel like everything has just fallen in my lap as it relates to, the trajectory and growth of the business where when it's meant to be, the stars align and it just works out.
Yep.
I think I think question for you, Stephanie. I think SEO is I'm a marketer and I know SEO is something that is needed, but the level of good SEO versus bad SEO, typically I need someone to help guide me and explain what is good SEO and what is bad SEO. I'm curious just in your evaluation with your own website resource, what were you not getting that you thought you needed and is a reason why that is a kind of service that you decided to invest further in.
Yeah, so the team that I was working with, even though I thought that I hired her locally, all of her team was overseas, and there was a huge communication disconnect with the way that things were happening, and I just didn't see the progress being made the way that the progress is being made with Numa. Like I didn't see content, I didn't see, it was just links. There was no real depth to what they were doing. And I know that, that whole saying, and this might be really outdated, but content is king. And giving people, value, like information. I know what it is for a website to be sticky, right? I know that when someone comes to my website and if it's not sticky, the it's going to send, and someone bounces and moves away from my website, that's going to send a negative indicator to Google letting them know that, hey, whatever that person searched wasn't relative because, or relevant, because that person just bounced right off of the site and went back searching again. So I knew that. And I really, that's why I wanted to work in a capacity where SEO was based on content, right? Based on keywords, based on backlinks that were quality backlinks, and that, we were using white hat technology or uh, initiatives as opposed to the black hat initiatives. And I know I'm throwing around all these like terms that most people don't know, but again, this just goes back to my, my time selling SEO and really knowing what it is.
You might you threw white hat and black hat out there, and it was just like somebody else knows what those mean. I love it though. I'd be curious as well, like with our engagement with your business, what's next for Hello Nanny? Where are you wanting to go? You have something cool. People have bought it. I always say, right, like you have a good understanding of who your ICP is. There's some good product market fit. I know you have a big vision for what you want to achieve, but what's next? What are you working on the next 3 months, 6 months that has you excited?
We are expanding into additional markets. And the goal is to eventually expand nationwide. I mean, we already are, we consider ourselves a nationwide
Yep.
agency. However, we don't have a footprint nationwide. So that growth will really happen organically with some of the partnerships that we've forged. And then also, our SEO initiatives and the additional markets that we'll be targeting and going after. But ultimately, the goal is that Hello Nanny is a household name. That as having a nanny becomes mainstream, because it has, and a lot of families, middle class, upper middle class, are now considering a nanny as their childcare solution. That it and that as that demand increases in our society, that Hello Nanny will become a household name.
Stephanie, what are you doing differently, just in terms of like marketing initiatives to help support that expansion? I'm really curious to understand if anything has changed based on that big vision, or is it just business as usual?
No, nothing has changed. I don't really want to give away too much because I don't want to give away my sauce per se. Um, SEO is a big thing, but I guess I'll leave it at relationships. Relationships. It's who you know gets you there, and what you know keeps you there. My grandpa used to tell me that, right? It's all about relationships, and it's about connecting with the right people and knowing how to align with brand synergies.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's something we see as well. We've coined it the search economy, but a world in which people look for answers before reaching out is broadly kind of the way we look at it. And I think it aligns with what your business is, other businesses are as well. But the types of companies that always seem to benefit most from that are the ones that still have that human to human interaction. We've helped plenty of companies with, I can check out on the site and be done. Totally fine. But it's that service side, it's the relationship side that people really want to look at. And using that site to start the conversation, the relationship to finish the conversation, get over the finish line. Any company that has that human to human touch is part of what they do, like you, like others. I always find them to be super successful with something on search because those people are searching for answers. And if you give them the best answer, the best worded answer, or you really wrap that answer in a nice bow, so to speak, they're like, they already like you before they reach out. Then you reach out, and it's so much easier to have a conversation because they know who you are, they know why you're in business, they've read some of your stuff, they've spent time with you, and you didn't even know it. That's the fun of it. So, yeah, to relationships, as you would say.
Yeah, I mean, and to build on that, I would just say that um, it's also about adding value, right? And when they see that you have all the knowledge because of the content on your site, when people go and they're online and they're searching for information, they're looking for something that's instantly gratifying. They
Yep.
have a question, and if you have the answer that they're looking for and all of the information and the knowledge, you've already put that opportunity in the bag, because you've given them, you've alleviated that cognitive dissonance that exists when they came to your site. So the minute that you give them that aha, you have what they need, and it's hook, line, sinker. Just solve my problem. And so I think it's so important too to build credibility and to be very knowledgeable and distinguish yourself as the expert in your space, because that's what's going to really help that, like you said, search economy um, really be the next customer.
Yeah, it's more than just writing a blog, right? You got to look like you're the expert in the space, and if you are, it makes it that much easier.
Mhm.
As we finish up, I'd be curious as well. you've had a lot of different careers, which is why, like, again, it's so funny to have a client that's also been on the other side and sold SEO as well. But done sales all the way back to 10 years old. What advice would you give to somebody starting a business? What advice would you give to somebody, even in your shoes, thinking about SEO, thinking about really anything? But seems like you've been around the block a few times, so I know you have an opinion on something.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say don't be discouraged. Will or take rejection, accept rejection, dust yourself off and go for more. There's going to be doors that slam in your face, but just go knock on the next one. And I don't mean literally because door knocking is frowned upon these days.
Yeah, yeah.
But just again, and just be willing to dig your heels in, do the research, and delegate the things that you aren't good at, and hire people for the thing. Like, you don't have to know how to do it all. Like I say, I'm a jack of all trades, a master of none. I've held many positions over my career. Do I know a little bit about SEO? Yes. Enough to do it myself? Absolutely not. And I knew that. So that's why I delegated that to your team. So it's being able to know that you don't have to do it all. You just have to know who to hire to do it.
Well said. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you jumping on, spending time. This was fun. I was excited to chat with you and dive into more of what you're doing. So excited to take this live. So you get to share it. We get to share it as well. But thanks again. And until the next time.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, guys.